Hi, it's Dwyer. It's February 18th, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I've said it a million times here online. Just understand it's how I roll. I believe the best bets on the board in all of Las Vegas are futures bets, right? Understand the basic premise. The world gets caught up in the moment. They forget about the actual team performance. They get blinded by playoff games. They overlook the injuries. So understand, it's early, it's now, it's when the rest of the world is sleeping that you want to walk in the front door unnoticed. No one cares about you. Who are you? You're just another gambler. You want to walk in the front door unnoticed. You want to do your homework. Then you want to place your bets. Let me point out that the bets you place here aren't necessarily the distribution of bets you're going to have at the end of the year. Right? Things are going to happen. People like Jaden Daniels are suddenly going to show themselves. You're going to realize, wow, you know what? This Washington Commander team actually is loaded offensively. Right? Players are going to get hurt. Suddenly Mike Evans is out. Even the great year Baker Mayfield is having can't fully compensate for him, and Chris Godwin also out. Right? The 49ers, folks, they could have filled up a hospital ward. So many guys were injured on that team. Brandon Ayuk signs a big deal. Suddenly he's out most of the year. Right? Christian McCaffrey, I picked him up in a fantasy pool where I won the regular season without him. Right? Couldn't get it done in the playoffs. Let's just say he was out for most of the year. So I'm just telling you, you're not going to find the bargains that you're going to get right now. Let's talk about some initial bets. Again, understand, futures are actually a week-to-week type thing. By the end of the year, you're going to have no more than, in terms of the teams that you're actually betting serious money on, no more than serious bets on, let's say, 4 or 5 teams. And because of the odds you've gotten now, right, some of those bets are going to have incredible leverage. So what I want to do here is just talk about futures props on teams that we don't even have to fantasize or speculate or extrapolate about. These are teams that made the playoffs. In other words, they have playoff caliber players in place. Many of these teams have quarterbacks in the top third of the league, but yet you're getting significant odds on them. So let me lead with this. The Houston Texans. Folks, you got C.J. Stroud. I understand some people are going to claim he regressed a little bit his second year. Folks, expect regression from Jaden Daniels his second year. What do you think offensive coordinators are focused on? What do you think defensive coordinators are focused on in the offseason? Right? The offense wants to give the young quarterback bigger responsibility. The defensive coordinator is saying, not so fast. Now we know Jaden Daniels can play. Right? Well, C.J. Stroud was the Jaden Daniels before Jaden Daniels. Well, just understand, Houston, a team that not only made the playoffs, they won in the playoffs this last year. You're getting them at 31 to 1. Think of their division. Who's going to knock them off in their division, folks? 31 to 1. I don't even have to believe in Houston. This is just a math game at this point. I don't have to believe in Houston. I just have to know C.J. Stroud, right? He was missing his big wide receiver, Nico Collins, for much of the year, for crying out loud. Nico, right? A team that won in the playoffs last year, and I'm getting 31-1. What do you think Houston's actual chances of winning the Super Bowl are? 1 in 10? In other words, you're getting considerable value with a team that made the playoffs last year and that won in the playoffs. Let's name another team. Now, folks, you heard me mention Chris Godwin, you heard me mention Mike Evans, right? Evans missed so much time that he was lucky to get to 1,000 yards. Isn't it time we admit what's painfully obvious on the stat sheet? Look at the stats. Baker Mayfield is in the top third of all quarterbacks in the league. You want success in terms of doing well in a division? Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right, folks? Tampa. Team that made the playoffs. You're getting them at 35-1. 35-1. Let me say a few other things. You have to realize that certain teams have histories, right? You want to prioritize the teams with winning cultures. The teams where, for whatever reason, they get maximum bang for the buck. I don't care if they're missing a quarterback right now. You understand the culture can offset that. Right? You also understand, too, that there's some provocative quarterbacks on the market right now. One of them is A-Rod, Aaron Rodgers. And we don't know where he's going to end up. Right? Well, let me just make a point here. I want people to just stop and think about this. We know that the Steelers made the playoffs last year. When was the last time a Mike Tomlin-led Steeler team finished below 500? Now, if you know the answer to that question is more than 10 years ago, if you understand that the Steelers are a team that has a very good defense, right? You know, a lot of parts work or don't work. Somehow that Steeler defense is tough. If you understand that the Steelers have a tradition of winning close games, then you understand whether you believe in them or not, whether you're looking at their division and you're saying, man, I can't see anybody other than the Ravens winning this division, right? Well, I'm guessing Cincinnati's finally going to wake up and they're going to do well in September, right? Even if you have those thoughts, the Steelers made the playoffs. They have the tradition, and you're getting them right here at 66-1. Right? If the Steelers were to announce that they've signed Aaron Rodgers, they've signed Sam Darnold, what do you think is going to happen to these odds? Right? 66-1. Let's talk about another team with a Super Bowl winning head coach. Now, subscribers here online know I don't believe in rookie quarterbacks. They should know the corollary to that. I don't believe second-year quarterbacks can win it all. I've seen some great second-year quarterbacks. Right? Dan Marino, I believe, passed for 5,000 yards his second year. I've seen some great second-year quarterbacks. But it's still too much too soon. Right? I recognize who Jaden Daniels was in, September or October? I'm expecting him to regress to the mean. Now, when you have a second-year quarterback like Bo Nix, right? Bottom line is that the league's going to catch up to him a bit. Defensive coordinators are going to pour over his film. What I want you to do is Look over at Denver's defensive numbers. Folks, they're off the page. A team with that level of defense, a team, by the way, that made the playoffs. Again, I'm not even dealing with outlier teams. I'm not dealing with, who the Washington Commanders were last year. I'm dealing with playoff teams. If you just look at Denver's defense, there simply is no way on God's green earth that this team should be above 20-1. Right? No way. Folks, right now you're getting Denver. Again, a team that made the playoffs last year at 48-1 to win it all. Now, what the public doesn't get is you don't have to win it all. Right? People say, how do you make money taking so many teams? Right, folks, if I throw $3 on Denver, just do the math, right? 96 plus 48 would give me the possibility of winning whatever that number comes to. It's north of 140. Right? Understand, I don't have to throw another dollar on Denver. It could be the middle of December. I could forget about Denver. Suddenly I look up and I see Denver has a chance to make the playoffs. I start hedging. I start fading them. Let's say Denver needs to win their last game of the season. It's against the Chargers. I say, you know what? Denver's been good to me because they're still in contention. That's all I need. Right? I have possible winnings of over $140 on Denver. For what, a $3 outlay? $3 outlay, I can win $144. So at that point, I can say, you know what? Even though this Denver Charger game is close, I'm going to throw $20 on the Chargers. What's the worst that can happen? Right? Chargers win the game. We'll assume it's an even money game just for math purposes. Right? I would have lost the $3 on Denver because Denver would be knocked out of the playoffs, but I would win $20. I've just squeezed the casino for $17 in profit. Let's say Denver wins that key game. Okay, I was looking at winning $144. Now I have, done away with $20 of that. I still have a chance at $124. I can fade Denver for additional games. Right? Especially if I don't believe in a second-year quarterback. Let's talk about a quarterback I believe in, and let's talk about absurd odds that you're getting. Now, folks, I've followed Herbert's career. Right? The Chargers made the playoffs. Understand, his head coach, I can tell you, was in the NFC Championship game multiple times. Led his team to the Super Bowl, didn't win it, but was damn close. This is a guy who turned around San Diego's program. This is a guy who turned around Stanford's program. This is a guy who turned around the University of Michigan's program. I'm talking about Jim Harbaugh. Right? The Chargers, I'll add a caveat. The teams you really want to be interested in are the teams with running backs. Right? So here, I get the Chargers. I'm not paying Saquon Barkley prices. I'm not paying, the running back for the Ravens, Derrick Henry prices. No, I get one of the elite running attacks in the National Football League with a quarterback I believe in, Justin Herbert. And you mean to tell me that I get the Chargers here after they made the playoffs? I'll agree. Houston confused Herbert. He looked terrible in that playoff game. I'll agree with that. But folks, they made the playoffs. They have the rushing attack. And let me just say the obvious here. They're a ridiculous bargain right here. at 33 to 1. 33 to 1. Right, folks? You're not going to come close to these odds in the month of December. Right? You want to have a great month of December? You want to bet now in the month of February. Also, I want folks to think about teams that you know have talent. You know have been to multiple recent Super Bowls. You understand the public is overlooking them. The talent still on the roster, you understand they have the same coach who led them to multiple Super Bowl appearances. Right? I need for folks to understand that I thought the Eagles were the best team in the NFC last year. Go back and look at some old videos I did here. Right, folks? One of the few teams that can hang with the Eagles, that won't have the overhang of having won the preceding year's Super Bowl. And understand, winning back-to-back Super Bowls, I know the Chiefs did it, right, the 2 years before this Super Bowl, but that's rare. Right, that's rare. I don't think the Eagles, because of the giddy feeling you get, the complacency you get, are going to represent the NFC in the next Super Bowl. Right? I'm just going by history. A team I think has at least as good a chance as representing the NFC as the Eagles right now. And the Eagles are a plus 550. Right? They're 5.5 to 1. But a team I believe has at least as good a chance of representing the conference are the San Francisco 49ers. Right? Figure it out, folks. Brock Purdy with Kyle Shanahan, that's magic. Understand, whatever happens with Christian McCaffrey, just recognize that his backup averaged 5 yards a carry. This is a team that can run the football. Understand, a lot of their guys were injured last year. Right? They're going to be back. Fred Warner playing with an injury. Nick Bosa playing with an injury. You know who else is back? Robert Saleh. Whatever you think of Saleh as a head coach, understand the man is badass as a defensive coordinator. Right? So I look at the NFC and I say, who can take this? Right? A team I believe in more strongly than the Detroit Lions, for example. Than the Minnesota Vikings, for example, are the San Francisco 49ers. As I said, you're going to walk in the front door of a casino, no one's going to look at you. You don't have anything they're interested in. You're making crazy picks. Let me make one here. San Francisco, 11 to 1. Are you kidding me? This might as well be December 25th. I'm getting a team that I feel is going to be one of the elite teams in the NFC. And you're giving me double-digit odds? I'm actually getting 11 to 1 on the Niners? You have got to be kidding. Now, I know there's risk involved, right? You're going to say, hey, Brandon Ayuk, he might not come back looking like Brandon Ayuk. You're saying Brock Purdy, is his signature on the contract yet? Right, folks? I'm just telling you. If you're Brock Purdy, you know you have no alternative but to come back to this offensively blessed team. Right, the other day, Davante Adams, right, who's from Northern California. Let me give a plug to the area around here. Davante Adams apparently indicated to teams, his representation indicated to teams that he's interested in coming back to the West Coast. Right? Folks, I was raised in New York City. I love the East Coast. Understand, you can't fight a player's bias. Right? If you're an East Coast guy, good luck. getting Saquon Barkley out of the NFC East. It's not going to happen. Right? The guy's from the area. The guy loves the area. He was a Giant. Now he's an Eagle. Well, understand, you have other athletes. Right? The Devontae Adamses of the world. They're like, hey, man, got all this money. I'm here in New York City. I'm with my guy Aaron Rodgers, and, I'm here in the tri-state area, after having been in Green Bay, right? And you know the rest. It's not enough. He's a West Coast guy. If you're a West Coast guy and you have options, you know it. Right? I need for folks to realize that guys like Devontae Adams could well end up with the Niners. Right? If he wants to win, if he has enough money in the bank account where he says, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit less here so I can play deep in the postseason. Right? If he looks at Brock Purdy, he understands this is a math guy. This is a guy last year who left the field with a lead in an overtime of a Super Bowl. You don't even have to tell Kyle Shanahan, throw the ball to your wide receivers. All you have to do is look at Brandon Ayuk's yards per catch the year before this last year. You understand, too, that not every team is Kansas City. Not every team can make a run every year. Typically what happens is that a team stumbles a bit. They get reminded of their mortality. Then they jump back in the mix. Right, folks? The Niners are loaded. I had the pleasure of going to the Niner opener against the Jets. To be blunt, I was really there for the Jets, not the Niners. And I can tell you, the stadium, the faithful, they were out. They were yelling. I looked around, it was Northern California. I was just thinking, my goodness, there can't be 5 places in the country that have a better scene for an NFL game than this one. I'm not saying the stadium matches SoFi or Jerry World. No, I'm just saying the scene, the culture. Right? You're walking in the stadium, you keep running into Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. Then you realize it's just their jerseys. Right? If you're lucky, you'll run into some other Niner jerseys. Right? Jeff Garcia, Roger Craig. You realize, man, this thing goes back a while through different eras. Right? You got the tradition, you got the head coach. Understand, the Niners have been in the big game so much that Jimmy Garoppolo was their quarterback in one Super Bowl against Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. Right? Brock Purdy was a quarterback in a Super Bowl against Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. What that shows you is that this Niner team is getting to Super Bowls. All that's left is the final step. You're getting them at 11-1. So this is not an exhaustive list. Understand, as news comes out, the line will adjust. You'll be surprised how much the line will overcompensate based on the NFL draft. Between you and me, you understand that not everyone coming out of the draft is going to deliver like a Jaden Daniels did. He's an outlier. You understand some quarterbacks, Justin Fields, picked in the top 3 of a draft, are still figuring it out. Others, Trey Lance, are still struggling. If the public thinks the draft matters that much, good for the public. You understand here in February, it really doesn't. You need to make picks now. Why? Because you're getting better than 30-1 on the Los Angeles Chargers and the Houston Texans. Right? And you realize they played each other in a playoff game. Right? So let's figure this out together. Let me also say, too, that some of these teams are going to collapse. Right? We don't know We simply don't know who's going to be this year's San Francisco. Right? San Fran, year before this year, in the Super Bowl with the lead in overtime. This last year, folks, they didn't make the playoffs. Right? That's what happens with injuries. That's what happens with questionable kicking. Right? That, the kicking's questionable. When I was in a Buffalo Wild Wings here in the Bay Area, and the Niner kicker made a standard field goal, and people started cheering at the Buffalo Wild Wings. Right? They wouldn't have blinked an eye if the guy was a good field goal kicker. But this guy was so shaky, folks started cheering. Right? Well, those problems can be addressed and can be adjusted. Right? Let me also say, too, that figure out the flow of a season. You're going to have some good teams start poorly. Right? This, by the way, is a tradition in Cincinnati of late, if anyone's been paying attention. Right? You'll be surprised how much the odds swing after the first week of the season. So you want to set it up so you're just betting chump change on teams like Denver here, right? And getting 48-1 leverage. Then, of course, good team stumbles out the gate. Right, Philly last year stumbled out the gate, and you're able to step in, and you're able to get them cheap. There's no reason to be paying plus 550s on Philly to win it all. Let me close by saying this. Kansas City has made 3 Super Bowls in a row. Right, folks? I believe every year gets harder and harder. Right? There was a time when they were riding high where someone could say, hey, Taylor Swift is in the building, and people turn their heads. That's what happens when you're in the middle of a bull run. Right? All this success, all this money, to quote Hendrix, all this money, and I don't know why. Right? You're getting all this fame, all this adulation. I couldn't avoid Pat Mahomes commercials. Right? Pat was in every other commercial. Right? I see Snoop, I say, hey, what's Snoop doing? Then, of course, Snoop is just the intro guy, the hype man for Pat Mahomes. Right, folks? We've seen how this plays out. 3 Super Bowls in a row tells me, even with some promising guys on offense, that Kansas City's not making the next Super Bowl. Right? I mean, no team has three-peated, not KC. Now I'm supposed to believe that they're going to get to another Super Bowl. I'm supposed to ignore the fact that, let's face it, their running back situation is by committee. It's an open question whether my next-door neighbor runs the 40 faster than DeAndre Hopkins. You saw Travis Kelce and you thought to yourself, wow, Kelce slowed down a lot during the regular season. But you assured yourself, oh, Travis Kelce in the playoffs, he's going to look like Jerry Rice. That's what the numbers suggest. Did you see him in that Super Bowl? Right? All I'm saying is you need to enjoy the extent to which teams like Kansas City right now are distorting the lines. Right? You see KC getting really short odds. Everyone, is still in love with KC as the AFC representative. People are overlooking the fact that KC won several games late in the fourth quarter. Right? Late in the fourth quarter. In other words, this team's not to be confused with the 85 Bears. Right? This team was on fumes for portions of the season. Right? You understand that. So, my point is take advantage of the price distortions. Right? You see KC overvalued. You see Philly overvalued. Right? Again, teams just don't repeat. Nothing against Philly. It just doesn't happen. right? KC did recently. That's distorting people's thinking, right? You see Philly overvalued, you see KC overvalued. What that means is that some other teams are undervalued. Time to make a move, right? Let me close by saying this. Green Bay. Folks, you're getting ridiculous odds on Green Bay. Let me point out the obvious. You want to prioritize teams with excellent quarterbacks, right? So let me just say, Green Bay right now, 20-1. Folks, you could overlook a 20-1 here in February. You and I know if I were having this conversation in early December, you couldn't. You would say a team as good as Green Bay, and I'm getting 20-1? Young talent, rushing game, Pro Bowl level quarterback, excellent head coach who has an edge on most. Right? You're looking at Green Bay and you're thinking, gee, 2 years ago this team was the cat's meow in the postseason, weren't they? Right? My point to you is a team like Green Bay, folks, if you think 20-1 on Green Bay would be a bargain in December, take them now. The teams I would fade would be the teams at the top right now, because just like San Francisco fell out of the playoffs, teams are going to revert to the mean. Also, I would fade the teams with new head coaches. Right? Everyone loves the former offensive coordinator for Detroit right now. Right? Everyone's saying, oh, he's great and stuff like that. You'd be surprised how different being a head coach is than being a coordinator, as Robert Saleh found out. Right? I would fade new head coaches. I would buy teams that made the playoffs last year that have quarterbacks in the top third of the league, coaches with playoff experience, traditions of the team finishing 500 or better. Those are my thoughts. This list is non-exclusive, right? Obviously, there are a lot of teams that I didn't mention here, right? Obviously, I haven't touched the AFC East. I haven't mentioned some other teams that I believe in. But just understand, right now, it's a sale. You're getting things for 30 cents on the dollar. Take advantage of what's being offered before the NFL draft. Right? These rookies don't do much. Don't believe for a second that every rookie is a Jaden Daniels or a Bo Nix who were able to lead their teams to the playoffs. Right? Those guys are outliers. They're so unusual, you might as well disregard them. Right? Your assumption should be that most of these rookies, they're promising, but they're more Trey Lance than they are Jaden Daniels. Right? Let me also say, too, teams with defensive traditions. Right? Does anyone here believe that you have to convince the Pittsburgh Steelers to play defense? You don't. You understand that's part of the culture. Right? Do you really believe that Denver's defense is suddenly going to fall apart next year? I don't. You give me an elite defense, and you give me, in Denver's case, 48-1, in Pittsburgh's case, 66-1, and the bet makes itself. I don't even need to know much about the teams. All I have to do is say, is Sean Payton still the head coach of Denver? Yes. Okay, that's a check. Right? Is Mike Tomlin still the head coach of the Steelers? Yes. That's a check. Right? These teams, because of coaching, culture, defense, they have an advantage on most of the league. If the casino's not going to recognize that, you need to. It needs to be part of your betting portfolio. Those are my thoughts. We'll track this story. We'll, hear news. Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with someone. Russell Wilson's going to sign with someone. Sam Darnold is going to sign with someone. right? Some other players are going to surprise you. They're going to change teams. Some other guys are going to hold out, right? Some other guys are going to get injured in training camp. We'll figure out the lay of the land as it shows itself. But until then, please, don't be foolish. When someone says, Pittsburgh Steelers, Tomlin Steelers, 66-1, you need to say, I'll take it. Right? Don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up thinking, man, Lamar was in the division. Wow, Josh Allen just won an MVP and that team looks under. Look, man, understand all you need to do is to get in the area code of the playoffs if you've been given 66-1 leverage. And that by itself gives you an opportunity to make money in the last few games of the regular season. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.